acquaintance we forgot and never brought to mind. Should old acquaintance we forgot and old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. And surely you'll buy your pint, and surely I'll buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll
Good morning. My name is Courtney. My pronoun is she. I am a white female mom-looking person with a gray sweater and a blue scarf and snow person earrings. Let's see. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness. No matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming, we greet you today with love. I'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who's watching us on YouTube this morning. During the prelude, please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from. If Oklahoma City, what neighborhood are you in? And if you're elsewhere, what city are you in? And now, the prelude prepares us for worship.
My name is Tim Atkins, and I'm proud to serve as your Director of Lifespan Religious Exploration. My pronouns are he, him. I'm wearing a purple shirt today with rainbow glasses, brown hair that needs a haircut. We light our chalice in Midtown, Oklahoma City, on land that was home to the first Americans, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land that was taken from the Muskogee and Seminole and other removed and relocated peoples. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
Again, welcome. Para nuestros amigos hispanohablantes, buenos días. I am Reverend Diana Davies, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman in my 50s wearing a clerical robe and a stole. And this is one of my ordination stoles today, so it's very special to me. At First Unitarian, we are sharing our pronouns and offering self-descriptions as part of our effort to ensure that no one is excluded from full participation in the life of our church. By the way, our sanctuary is equipped with a telecoil hearing loop system. Please see your hearing aid provider to learn how to access this. And we have large print orders of service and hymnals available at the back of the sanctuary. And I neglected to mention that our window today is lit up in lavender in honor of the season of Advent. Our opening words are adapted from a text by Reverend Erica Hewitt. When I go like this, please respond, I am arriving together we arrive. We are here in body, whether in this building or joining online, and yet we are still arriving. When we left our homes this morning to come to church, or turned on our computers and settled in to watch this service online, we set aside our chores and our to-do list, knowing they will still be there when our time together is done. I am arriving, together we arrive. Now, some of us don't remember the last time we had a quiet time to ourselves, and yet we have chosen to be here together to tend to our souls and to one another. I am arriving, together we arrive. In the days since we last met, some of us have been changed, while others are inviting change to take place within them. Some of us have experienced loss. We've lost things, lost opportunities, or even people dear to us. I am arriving, together we arrive. Some of us are fighting battles we can't even speak about. Others feel happy enough that we could have flown here on our own arms. We arrive not knowing quite what to expect, but finding comfort in that which is familiar. I am arriving, together we arrive. Our arriving will not happen all at once. As we each settle in, we will find our way into togetherness, and in our own time, arrive. I am arriving, together we arrive. All are invited to remain seated and join in singing our opening hymn. It's number 253 in the gray hardback hymnal, O Come All Ye Faithful.
is Courtney. I am reading The Time for All Ages story, which is The Real Gift by Aisha Hauser and Susan Lawrence. And I have with me a 40-something-year-old pink hand-crocheted blanket. Nelson was worried. He had been worried about something all week, and this afternoon it was going to happen. During cleanup at church school, he decided to talk to his teacher, Lilia. "Nelson, is everything okay?" she asked. "Well, not really. My Nana Elsa is moving in with me and my dad's today." "It sounds like you don't want her to move in," Lilia said. "Our house will be too crowded," Nelson said, "and now I'll have 3 grown-ups telling me what to do, my grandmother and my 2 dads. Lilia took a minute to think, and then she said, "Nelson, both your dads are my friends, and I know your grandmother too. I know they all love you very much, and it may take time to get used to her living with you, but I think it's important that you welcome Nana Elsa, even though you're worried," Lilia said. "Welcome her? Why? She's already in my family," Nelson asked, puzzled. "Well, Nana Elsa may be worried today too," said Lilia. "She's moving into a house where 3 people already live, and she might be worried that you and your dads don't really want her there, and it will be important to let her know that you love her." Well, Nelson thought Lilia was probably right. Nana Elsa might be feeling worried today too. So when he got home, Nelson made a card for his grandmother. He drew himself, his dad's, and Nana Elsa standing in front of their apartment building, and he wrote, "Welcome, Nana. I love you. Love, Nelson." He brought the card into the extra bedroom where his grandmother was putting her clothes into the dresser drawer. "Hi, Nana. I wanted to give you something," he said. "Oh, thank you very much, Nelson," she said. "I love this card, and I wanted to give you something too, but I thought it would be better for us to make it together." "Make what?" Nelson asked. "May I teach you to crochet? It's easy. We could make a small blanket together. You could put it on your legs when you watch TV," Nana Elsa said. "Can I pick the color? I really like pink," Nelson said. The next day, Nelson and his grandmother walked to the craft store and bought pink yarn and crochet needles. And for 2 weeks, almost every day, Nelson sat with Nana Elsa after school talking and crocheting. When the blanket was finished, Nelson took it to church to show Lilia. "Wow, you made that with your grandmother?" Lilia said. "That sounds like fun, and it looks warm." Nelson loved that blanket. He took it everywhere with him, and because he took it everywhere, one day when he wanted to take it to bed with him, he couldn't find it. And the whole family started looking for it, but the pink blanket was gone. At bedtime, Nelson was still upset. Nana Elsa sat on his bed and held his hand. "Nelson, I hate to see you so sad," she said. "But Nana, we made that blanket together. I loved it so much and now it's gone," he cried. "I know you feel bad, but you know, Nelson, the most important gift was not the blanket," said his grandmother. "It was the time that we spent making it. You made me so happy when you welcomed me into your home. I wanted to spend special time with you making something, and we did that. The real gift was the time that we spent together making it, and we will always treasure that time and our love for each other and for our family." Nelson looked up at Nana Elsa. He rubbed the tears from his face, and he realized Nana was right. The time they spent together was the real gift, and he realized he was glad now that his grandmother lived with him and his dad's. "I love you very much, Nana," he said. "I love you very much too, Nelson," she said.
Now is the time in our service where we sing our children and youth and RE teachers off to their religious exploration classes for the day. So please join us in singing "Go Now in Peace." And Ms. Carmen will lead our children and youth up to class.
every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of December, our Change for Change partner is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, the UUSC. Founded in 1940, the UUSC advances human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with those who confront unjust power structures and mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. Their work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity. Current strategic priorities include global crisis response, climate justice, and Central American migrant justice. For those who are in the sanctuary today, in just a moment, we'll be passing the offering plate. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian. Just write Change for Change in the memo line or make an online payment through our website, 1UC.org.
So this is what it looks like after we sing the children and youth out. It's nice to be joining you all today. In 2015, I was elected to the UUA board as one of 13 trustees. I was 32 and finishing my second year serving as a professional religious educator. Once elected to the board, I was asked to serve and later chair the governance team. Now, why was I, a random young adult religious educator, asked to head up the governance work of the UUA board? Well, Jim Key, who was board president and moderator at the time, told me it was because I was detail-oriented. And one of those details I discovered was that we are massively past due for a study on Article 2. Now, before I continue that story, it's time for a pause to talk about our wider denomination's governance system. Now, I know this is perhaps not the most exciting topic for you on a Sunday morning, so let's see if I can explain this in 2 minutes or less. Our basic governance structure is that of congregational polity. That means each church is its own institution. The easiest example to show this is that each Unitarian Universalist church is responsible for hiring and firing its own staff, rather than the staff being assigned by a central authority. Each church is responsible for setting up its own processes through congregational bylaws. So how do you govern a group of independent congregations? Well, a long time ago, First Unitarian made the conscious decision to affiliate and join the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, or the UUA for short. Well, back when we joined, it was actually called the American Unitarian Association. Now, more on that in a little bit. So, this church is a member congregation of the UUA. And just like our church has a set of bylaws and how we function as an organization, the UUA has a set of bylaws and how it functions as an organization. Every year, our church has an annual meeting to have formal votes, and our church has a board to govern between the annual meetings. The same is true for our national denomination. The ultimate governing authority in the UUA is General Assembly, or GA for short. Every year, congregations select delegates to head to our annual General Assembly meeting in June. This is where the business of the association gets done, and we make bylaw changes. Since the General Assembly doesn't meet all year long, there is a board of trustees that is charged with governance during the year while GA is not in session. Okay, we're done with that part. Let's recap the UUA governance system. Each church is independent and has its own set of bylaws. Each church voluntarily agrees to enter into covenant and join the UUA, which has its own set of bylaws. Each year at General Assembly, congregational delegates vote on changes to those bylaws, and the UUA board manages governance throughout the year. Now, flashback to Tim from 8 years ago, looking very confused, as suddenly he's managing the entire UUA board's governance work. So one of the first things I did was read the UUA bylaws. And then I read them a few more times, because let's face it, it's not a Bridgerton novel, and it took some time to fully digest. One of the things I found buried in the bylaws is in Article 15, specifically, and bear with me, C.15.1.6. And buried in that rule is this, quote, if no study process of Article 2 has occurred for a period of 15 years, the Board of Trustees shall appoint a commission to study Article 2 for not more than 2 years and to recommend appropriate revisions. So what's all of that mean in English? This time it's time for another pause, this time a very brief history lesson. So the story of the merger is a sermon in of itself, so I'm making this extremely short today. Our church, First Unitarian OKC, was a member of the American Unitarian Association before 1960. In the early 60s, the American Unitarian Association merged with the Universalist Church of America. Two small-ish liberal denominations decided to join forces. Each had its own history, its own structures, its own governance. And merging two big institutions can be fun. It took a few years to hammer out a set of bylaws that could be agreed upon by delegates from both denominations. The most important article of those bylaws that we're talking about today, and all of this is a lead up to it, is Article 2. The following explanation comes from the Article 2 Study Commission. Article 2 is one of the letter C, bylaws, dating to the merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Association in 1961. Much of the C bylaws reflects compromises that were made in order to achieve the merger. Different pieces of the C bylaws were important enough to one side or the other that these were made harder to change and harder to amend than non-C bylaws. The first major rewrite of the principles and purposes post-merger were adopted in 1984. Some slight changes were made after that, but the language is largely unchanged since 1984. The principles guide our actions and priorities, encouraging us to affirm and promote core values, while sources provide the context and grounding for these purposes and principles. This article states our purpose, our very reason for existing. Section 2.3 commits us to being inclusive and to replacing barriers that have kept some people and groups from full participation in our faith. And Article 2 ends by ensuring freedom of conscience and prohibiting creedal tests. Now, for some religious institutions, the equivalent of Article 2 would be regarded as a permanent statement of belief, like the Nicene Creed or something like that. Ours, however, is a living tradition. We commit ourselves to regularly revisiting our principles and purposes to ensure that we are still relevant, that as we grow in understanding, our principles and purposes do too. So Article 2 of the UUA Bylaws is where our principles and sources are located. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, these can be found in your hymnal. It's in the preface, in the first few pages, the principles and sources. Now, the first version of our principles was part of the initial set of bylaws for the newly merged UUA and were adopted in 1961. The original 6 principles are very different than what's in your hymnal, and they were, number 1, to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. 2, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, and memorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. Number 3, to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. Number 4, to implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. Number 5, to serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. And finally, number 6, to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. Those sound very different than what we have today. In 1985, there was a push by the UU Women's Federation to revise those principles to the ones we currently have with more gender-inclusive language. The 1985 version is what's most familiar to you right now. But it's important to note that these are not our original UU principles. There are likely folks here in this church who remember a time before 1985 and the current version of the UU principles. And just like in the 80s, in the early 2020s, there has been another national process to see if we wanted to revise the principles. The bylaws dictate it happens every 15 years, and we were massively past due. Now, back then we couldn't act on it right away because the UUA was facing some serious upheaval in the late 2010s. The UUA president resigned, the moderator died, and the denomination was forced to grapple with the culture of white supremacy. The board recognized that we were in the midst of an inflection point in our denomination's history. It was clearly time for us to better define our beliefs as a movement. So I ended up resigning from the UA board in January of 2019, just as the Article 2 process was finally getting underway. The UA board appointed a stellar committee of folks to lead this process, many of whom I happen to know personally. They've been working incredibly hard over the past few years with countless surveys and focus groups and more to hear from everyday Unitarian Universalists what they believe about the world. And they've created, I think, something beautiful. So what comes next? Because this is one of those C bylaws that are extra hard to change, it takes 2 years. So this June at General Assembly, delegates from all of our UU churches, including ours, will vote on whether or not to proceed with this change. It needs a simple majority vote in the first year. And then at GA 2024, there will be a second vote, which needs to pass by 2/3. If it passes both years, then we will have a new Article 2. Excuse me. Ooh, that was my microphone, sorry. I want to stress that nothing has changed yet, and nothing will change at least until the summer of 2024. But I, for one, am excited about this. One of the reasons I'm a Unitarian is because my own spiritual and religious beliefs have evolved over time. One of the reasons I'm a member of a UU church is that the UU church also evolves over time. One of the reasons I'm a religious educator is I love talking about this stuff. And this process, even if you end up not really liking the results, is one of the things that makes us Unitarian Universalist. We're using a national democratic process to define our shared beliefs. What other denomination can claim they undergo a similar process on a somewhat regular schedule? It's one of the things that makes us uniquely UU. And I, for one, think it's historic that we get to have a say in our denomination's principles and beliefs. I'm approaching this time of evolution with excitement and hope for a better shared future of Unitarian Universalism. And I hope you join me with that excitement. Thank you.
So you may remember that little show, The Grinch Stole Christmas, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And there's a scene where we see the Grinch's heart, which remember was very, very small. And the Grinch's heart grows not just twice in size, but 3 times in size that day. So big that it breaks out the little box, the little x-ray box, right? So today I want to ask you to imagine your heart and just notice what's happening with your heart today. And for some of us, our hearts may feel full. We may feel full of love, of gratitude, of joy, or maybe full of sadness. And some of us may feel like that Grinch in the first part of the story when his heart feels very, very small. Right? Maybe we feel a little numb today. Whatever you find, I just invite you to notice that. And then I invite you to imagine, whether you think of it as your heart or whatever for you is the source of love, imagine that growing larger. You might think of that Grinch heart growing 3 times in size. And the heart, the love, expands out into your body, especially to those places that are hurting, physically hurting, or where we're holding emotional pain. And then I invite you to imagine that heart growing still, even beyond the edges of your body, out to those people closest to you, your friends and your family, children, parents, relatives, those people around you to whom you want to extend your heart, your love. And then imagine again your heart growing even larger, reaching out to your community, to this congregation, to your neighbors, sending that heart, that love to all of them. And again, imagining that heart growing even bigger, still moving out to your neighborhood, to your city, to your state, to the whole country. Expanding out to those who agree with you and who disagree with you, but all who are deserving of love. And once again, expanding that heart bigger and bigger, yet out to the whole world. Out to those places experiencing war and cold and hunger and danger. Out to those places living in poverty. Out to those places that we may not even think about in our daily lives, but where there are people, so many people, deserving of love. And let that heart grow bigger still, all the way to the universe, out and out beyond the reaches of what we can see, what we can even imagine. And I invite you to join me in this wish, in this prayer. May all that is be infused with love. May all that is be held in love. May all know peace. May it be so. Amen. And remaining in a meditative state, let's listen to our choir as they sing, "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear." As a relatively new Unitarian Universalist, 2017 was only my third time attending General Assembly, and it was a doozy. It was one of the more important GAs in the history of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Some of you will remember that was a year of upheaval. President Peter Morales, the first Latinx UU president, along with two other top denominational leaders, had resigned only a few months before. That was part of an ugly mess related to a history of racially biased hiring practices. The UU world was not rosy. But despite the recent trauma, the 2017 General Assembly revealed what is best about our faith. It revealed our resilience, our persistence, and our creativity. Instead of agonizing over who to appoint as an interim president, the UUA appointed 3 interim co-presidents, all of them people of color, all of them incredibly gifted. They led our faith through the worst times with extreme grace, and they modeled shared leadership. And at the 2017 General Assembly, Susan Frederick Gray was elected the first woman president in the history of the Unitarian Universalist Association. In one of the business sessions, a business resolution to amend our second source from the words and deeds of prophetic women and men to the words and deeds of prophetic people was passed with overwhelming support. Now, traditionally, such votes would be taken only after a long back and forth from speakers lined up between the pro and the con microphones. But not a single delegate spoke from the con mic on this issue. Those who spearheaded the change in language at this 2017 GA were careful to honor the work of those who had crafted the original language back in the 1980s. In a statement they wrote, quote, "We honor the history that made the wording women and men a true and courageous move toward justice when it was first written. Affirming a multitude of genders is our aspiration now," unquote. I was in the convention hall at the time this vote was passed, and the spirit of progress and community was electric. But there was a second vote that day that left me dispirited. I had come to that General Assembly as a supporter of something called the First Principle Project. We were a group of folks associated with the UU Animal Ministry who wanted to see the first principle changed from the inherent worth and dignity of every person to the inherent worth and dignity of every being. As a statement from the First Principle Project put it, quote, "The goal of any version of the first principle is not to keep the circle of compassion small until each gets their share of dignity or compassion. We are called to extend the circle, each working to deepen our faith in the inherent worth and dignity of all," unquote. I saw the damage that has been done to the planet and the endless suffering endured by countless animals because of anthropocentrism. And I thought the proposed new language pointed a way toward a kinder world for all. But it turned out that few others in the hall that day felt the same way. This time, the line at the con mic was long. And when we broke out into small discussion groups, little dialogue groups, into an effort to promote discussion and dialogue. The same person who had been really nice and very friendly with me when we were both agreeing on the previous issue suddenly was not so nice. And I remember her asking angrily, "So many marginalized and oppressed people have fought so hard to be recognized as human beings, and we are still so far from having everyone's humanity recognized. And now you want to skip over that to focus on animals?" Well, at the time, I had no response. She was right about the dehumanization of oppressed peoples. And yet, I still wanted to argue that the struggle for worth and dignity is not a zero-sum game, that treating non-human beings with decency and kindness doesn't leave us with less decency and kindness for our fellow human beings. I wanted to argue that our principles are aspirational, after all, and why not extend the circle of love and care as far as possible? But it was clear that there was not broad support for an expanded first principle, and the issue was tabled. The First Principle Project supporters were assured that a new Article 2 study commission would review all of the principles and sources, and that a consideration of this expanded version of inclusion would be part of that review. But that assurance did not assuage my sense of woundedness at the time. I had seen my faith at its best that day. But during that discussion of the first principle, I'd also seen some of my fellow UUs be very quick to judgment, and I'd heard some unkind words. I'd been accused of elitism and other things that really just cut into my heart. And for the first time since I'd walked into a UU congregation in 2008 and wept, singing Blue Boat Home, still makes me cry every time, wept because I finally had found a spiritual home. For the first time, I experienced some doubt in my chosen faith. And I remember going back to my hotel room feeling very self-righteous and pulling out that First Principle Project statement so I could read for myself again the thoughtful and compassionate arguments. And that is where I came across this paragraph under the heading, "How will we know if our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations is ready for this change?" Quote, "No one knows a direct route in how to live this way. The path forward will meander, might retreat for a while, and could even seem to spiral into and out of chaos and complexity. We will never be ready if we never make the attempt. We can prepare ourselves for the best possible success if we do our work, and we do it together with as much love, compassion, and faith as we can muster. And for this reason, the First Principle Project is as much about individual and organizational process and dynamics as it is about end results." Unquote. And there it was, a reminder of why I had fallen in love with this faith in the first place. Our processes of governance, our creation of covenant, as messy and awkward and contentious as they may be, they're not an unfortunate means to a beautiful end. Like with the beautiful pink blanket in the story that Courtney told. It's the process that matters. If you consider our values and our aspirations, they are bonkers. Universal love worth and dignity, true equity, the belief that people can do good and practice kindness even without the threat of hell or the lure of heaven, the salvation can be gained without a savior, the idea that people of different backgrounds who believe different things really can exist as a single beloved community. There's no roadmap for how to get to a place that doesn't even exist, which is why we're building the map as we go, which is why our larger faith is undertaking this extremely difficult task of reviewing and potentially completely rewriting our beloved principles and sources. Now, some might say, and may have said, why not leave well enough alone? But well enough doesn't move us forward. And our faith compels us to keep moving forward, even if that path involves a whole lot of meandering and retreating and spiraling into and out of chaos and complexity. I can't tell you what the new Article 2 of our UUA bylaws will look like by the time this process is finished. But I can tell you that some will mourn the loss of a particular aspect of our current principles and sources that they especially love. Many of us are Team Principle 1 or Team Principle 7. Those may not be around in that form anymore. Some will think the new statement of values and covenant goes too far. Others will think it doesn't go far enough. And there is a chance the whole endeavor could fail. Those votes might not pass, and we could go right back to where we started. But we'll never know if we don't make the attempt. So we do the work together with as much love, compassion, and faith as we can muster. Please rise in body or in spirit to sing our congregational hymn. It's number 239 in the gray hardbound hymnal, Go Tell It on the Mountain.
Sent us salvation.
And Tom, would you extinguish our chalice for us? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community, which burns in our hearts. After our service today, all are invited to Daniel Hall for coffee and conversation. And as you are leaving the sanctuary this morning, our ushers will be handing out copies of the draft Article 2 so that you can read that yourself. And now I leave you with this blessing. May you know the frustrations, the challenges, the joys, and the gifts of change. May you embrace the messiness as much as you embrace the beauty. May you follow the paths that others have laid in a spirit of gratitude and humility. And may you find courage for those times when you must depart from the known way. May you know the fulfillment of good work, even when the work is very hard. And finally, may you know peace. May it be so.